Hi, herzlich willkommen bei Sales & Pepper Interviews, deinem Tech-Sales-Podcast für den Dachmarkt. Mein Name ist Dominik Klingberg und ich bin dein Podcast-Host. Hier erwarten dich fesselnde Insights und strategische Tipps direkt von Revenue-Leadern, um deinen Vertrieb aufs nächste Level zu bringen. Ab sofort gibt's jeden Donnerstag eine brandneue Folge, vollgepackt mit spannendem Know-how und inspirierenden Gesprächen. Wenn du also mehr von dem Podcast hören willst, dann abonniere jetzt den Podcast und verpasst keine Folge mehr. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit der nächsten Folge. Übrigens, hast du schon vom Tomorrowland für Sales Teams gehört? Am 19.04. veranstalten wir exklusiv für dich und dein Team das erste Training- und Networking-Event für Tech-Sales und Customer Success Teams in ganz Europa. Sei dabei, wenn hunderte Vertriebstalente zusammenkommen, um sich über die neuesten Strategien, effektivsten Tools und effizientesten Prozesse für Sales- und Customer Success Teams auszutauschen. Ein ganzer Tag vollgepackt mit Insights, Motivation und natürlich jede Menge Spaß erwarten dich. Willst du zum Top-Performer werden? Dann verpasse nicht den Sales Circus der Superlative. Alle Infos und Tickets findest du unter www.arartist-circus.com. Sichere dir jetzt deinen Platz und werde Teil der einzigartigen Sales Community. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales & Pepper Interviews. Here's your podcast host, Dominic, and I'm talking to Mafalda Johansson today. She's the commercial director at Wanderway. So hello and welcome, Mafalda.
Hey Dom, nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
For those people who don't know you, Mafalda, I mean, you have over 8,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's quite impressive. We know each other from several events, and also both are community members or ambassadors at SCS of Germany, also having done the Masterclasses there. So there's like a couple of things we've done together. You're also a speaker at the Artist Circus next year. So I know you quite well, but for those who don't know you, please introduce yourself a bit.
I think you already did, right? My name is Mafalda. I'm from Portugal. You can tell by my name. I was named after a cartoon called Mafalda. My mother loves the cartoon and she thought it was a good idea to name me after it. So that's my personal side. As Dom said, I'm commercial director at Wanderway. That means I supervise marketing, business development, and customer success. I'm responsible for these three departments, but my background is business development. That's my expertise, let's say. And my masterclass at STRs of Germany is exactly prospecting technical personas, because before Wanderway, I used to prospect engineers, CTOs, head of quality assurance, and I never found a lot of sales material specific to that, and that's why I'm trying to fill out that, let's say, market hole. At Wanderway, just a quick overview of what my company does. We basically an AI sales coach, so we plug into the sales calls and we give personalized feedback. That's it. That's the pitch slap for today. I'm not going to talk more about it.
Very good. And I think like most managers knows this problem that you don't have time for coaching, right? So I think it's really cool what you're doing there. And of course, everyone wants to use AI nowadays, so probably also a good moment for your product.
Exactly. We took the advantage because our first product, it still exists, is an LMS, so it's like a product to onboard and train your employees, but it's very reliant on the person using it. We just give you the platform, but then it has to be the sales manager building the training in it. And this one, it's more takes a bit more of the work on the shoulder of the manager. So that's the advantage of using AI to the new product.
Yeah, and you already spoiled a bit what we want to talk about today. It's going to be about training and onboarding and the difficulties that comes with it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Like I mean, you just said, like, we both did the masterclass. My masterclass is about the first 90 days as an account executive, and also my idea behind it was helping people getting successful in their role, because I felt back then when I was an AE that there was no good content out there that helped me being successful in my role.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had always luck that my companies had provided quite good training and onboarding. But I think what I hear at least is that this is very different from company to company. But maybe you can tell us a little bit, Mafalda, what's your experience there? Like, what's the thing with your onboarding?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like onboarding is, for me, is key for the success of a person, even if the person wants to work in sales or not in the future, right? Because if you haven't done any sales before and you go to a company and the onboarding is quite poor, and sales, as all of us know, it's difficult and it's high pressure and we have targets. And if you don't feel prepared, if you don't feel that you're set for success, then the likelihood of you giving up and changing career is huge. So I think a good onboarding is not only essential for the company and the targets and to reach the targets, but also to reduce turnover and to keep people in the profession of sales. And I've experienced firsthand really not great onboardings, and also at Wanderway, one of my jobs as customer success leader is to also provide feedback on the onboardings of our customers. And there are like common mistakes I see all over, like all over again. And those are really pretty easy things to solve and would make the difference between a successful onboarding and really not a great one. And I think companies should really like invest on the onboarding. I see many times it's something like, here's the material, it's rushed. We need to rush because we have KPIs to meet. So please start like working with no knowledge at all.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like there's two sides, right? One is like actually who owns the onboarding. The first very interesting questions, but sometimes it's like an enablement team. When you're lucky, there's an enablement team.
Great,
but then also
that's
like
great.
If there's
but
if the sales manager is owning it, then he normally don't have time, especially if he already has like 6 to 7 people to manage. It's hard to actually invest the time in the proper onboarding and being like one-on-one in coaching sessions and stuff. But also like sometimes there's actually no onboarding at all, and you just like are thrown in the cold water and say just pick up the phone and do your job. And companies expect people to know what to do, and that's just not the reality, right?
It's insane.
What do you think about that?
And there is another scenario. So those 3 scenarios, like sales enablement, that would be the best. Sales manager, not so great. No onboarding, terrible. Another scenario is putting HR in charge of it, which for me it's mind blowing. It's like, I don't know anything about HR, and HR doesn't know anything about sales unless they have done sales before, right? So it's quite crazy that you get trained from people who are not related to sales sometimes. That's for me, that's completely no, I cannot understand that. But it's very common that companies, they just expect people to know what to do, or sometimes they think they are providing onboarding by saying, hey, go to Notion or Google Drive and read the case studies and good luck. And they think that's onboarding. Or there are many phases, right? So no onboarding, then people think that like throwing content at people is onboarding. Then there is another one, they think it's a bit better but still not great, which is, here is a bunch of videos that you don't need to learn about, but we find them cool. and look at these effects and the sounds. So you should totally listen to these videos that you have that are completely useless, and then do a quiz on them on top of it. So you spend like 3 hours watching things that they don't matter to do an assessment that doesn't matter either. And then you expect people to be, now you feel ready, right? Now you can write a great email or do a great cold call. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
Absolutely
But
not.
then the interesting question, Mafalda, what's a better way to do it? Like, how should it look like?
Like, I think, like, first, and it's, I know it sounds basic, but it's something that's an advice I give uh, all the time, which is, new learners, like any new employee, no matter how senior you are, the first weeks are always overwhelming, right? No matter how experienced you are. If I go to a new company and with a new product, I'm gonna feel overwhelmed because I don't know the personas, I don't know the product. So you already, or the processes or the structure. So it's, no matter what, you will already have an overload of information. So you don't have to overload with things that don't matter. And only show things and teach things that matter at this point in time. And this point in time part is very important, because probably you will need to learn how to use the CRM, right? How to add deals to it. But if you're not going to do it in the first 3 weeks, then don't teach it now, because that's useless information for that specific time, What will
Yeah.
happen is I will learn, I will forget because I'm learning 10,000 times, and then I'll have to relearn again in 4 weeks. So it's a time waster, and it's adding
That's
stress to me,
yeah.
as a new
I
employee.
I can I can relate to it so much because, like, looking back to my onboarding at Pleo, it was the first time in my career when I felt overwhelmed for at least 6 months, because it was,
For
first of all, it was the first time
Yes,
working in SaaS, and then it was a super complex product. So I thought it's quite easy,
yes,
right? Just selling credit cards, but then it was like super deep into the whole software, and you wanted to know like each feature and what kind of questions could the prospect ask. So you really need to build like a huge load of information in your brain to also,
yeah.
like, know all the competitors in the market. So it's like a lot of information. And
And
what
I
they did
love
is
that
like
you
we had,
fact. No, go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
No, I just said like what they did is like they had like an onboarding program called Bricks. What I really liked, because it was like round about 2 weeks where you were together with all the new starters. Doesn't matter which team you were working on, and then it was basically running through all the different teams we had at the company. So you got a great understanding of who's doing what, why is it important what they're doing. So I think that was quite helpful. And then you had like a proper sales onboarding. The thing was, it was all
Yeah,
in English because it was owned by Enablement team. And after the one, like let's say 1 month, I was there in the role 1 month, and I hadn't done any cold call, anything like what is related to my job, right? So I felt like, hey, I'm still here, like already here for 1 month, but I haven't done anything, right? And then of course in months 2 and 3, you get started and you have your target, and then you feel like the pressure of, oh shit, I haven't even started yet, and still learning. So I think that was for me the first time where I really felt it was too much of information right in the beginning, and I couldn't really use the
yeah.
information to do my job.
So you mentioned two things that are really, really key here. The first one, at the beginning when you mentioned, I had to learn a lot of things about the product that are really complex. So that's
Yeah,
another mistake that I see often. So you have, like, it's exactly how you described. You are new in SaaS. I was new in SaaS. I come from the tourism background, right? I don't really
yeah,
love technology. My first smartphone, I had it in 2019, believe it or not. That's how much I'm not into technology, right? And then so you come from a completely different background. You maybe don't love technology, at least to know the jargon. And then the first week, they teach you loads of features of your product that are relevant in a month time, in 2 months time. So what happened was you didn't learn and you're stressed. And when you're stressed, you don't have the headspace to learn or to be creative or to be productive, So that's the first
yeah,
mistake that I see a lot and that you mentioned and you experienced at firsthand. And the second one you mentioned as well when you were, like, telling your story, and this is what I hear all the time and I've experienced myself, is you had a whole month learning about a myriad of things, and then you only do your first cold call on the second month when you already have the target counting. Probably you have an onboarding target, but it's still a target, right? Like, in my onboarding, when I onboard my SDRs, they are cold calling on the second week already.
Yeah.
They are already writing emails on the second week, not on the second month. And that's exactly what I see very often. It's a lot of theory, a lot of knowledge that you don't need that in that given point in time, a lot of assessments that are not related to your daily job. And then you do a lot of things and you learn a lot of things that are completely useless, or at least 50% of it. And then you expect people to start and nail it. How?
Yeah.
Like, how?
I think like what has been very helpful for me in the past, like was shadowing, right? So just like the first 2 days, you basically do nothing else than just sitting next to one of your peers that is actually doing the job. So you understand what is the person doing, what is he saying, and you just write down notes. And I think that was so helpful for me to like, I don't need to know everything about the product, but I need to know what kind of questions coming up and stuff like this. And then also like what you just described, if it's too much of theory, your brain is just overloaded. So I think it's better to have some kind of mixture of training like theory and then trying to apply it right away than just having theory for weeks and then you forgot everything already.
That's exactly one of the things I mentioned when I advise people on creating an effective onboarding is a bit of theory, practice right away. A bit of theory, practice right away. And practice that is related to what you're going to be doing. So if you do a theory about what a good email look like, then the assessment should be write me a prospecting email and I'll correct it, and then you're going to learn. And then you can pick those learnings when you start emailing, right? So then we talk about cold calling, right? So what a good script looks like. And then this lesson is, let's do a role play on cold calling, or at least record yourself pitching the product. So I hear it, how you say it. Or for example, when you learn about your buyer personas, right? Then maybe write down like the main challenges, right? Or main challenges, and relate to the parts of your product that solve those challenges. Like you should have assessments that really reflect what you will be doing in your daily job, so the manager as well knows if the SDR or the AE is actually ready. Because I've had that as a manager. Like from the first week of onboarding, I could almost always already tell who's going to be the top performer, or at least who's going to be reaching targets, by the quality of their assessments. So it gives me red flags from the beginning, not by the end of the quarter when there is nothing I can do. They will fail. We're going to miss our target,
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I've also seen is that what you just described, like it's job of the manager, of course, to onboard the people. But on the other hand, of course, they're busy, like super busy most of the times. So normally that's one of the things that are actually missing in quality, is like taking time for the people to really coach them and train them. And what I think what was quite helpful is to have champions for different topics like in your team. So if I know, like for example, Jan Mundorf, he's very strong in outbounding and like social selling, of course I would trying to set up my onboarding, like we had the normal onboarding and then I was trying to do like a German speaking onboarding afterwards, to trying to intensify the knowledge also for the people, and then taking people from my team and say, hey, please do one session about social selling. And then you can jump into the one-on-one and ask people, okay, do you have questions about this topic, and go a little bit deeper, but trying to also put the work on different shoulders, and not just having it like owning yourself as a manager, and then you just don't do it because you don't find the time, right? So I think that's something I can really recommend.
Yes, that's another thing. I love that you pick out on that, because a lot of the times managers, they want to do everything and then they do nothing. And it's better to have like it's better to have an okay onboarding than no onboarding at all, And that's something I apply for myself, for my career, but also with my teams, which is done is better than perfect, Obviously, and especially, I work in a startup. As I said in the beginning, I have loads of responsibility in departments. I cannot just be focused and obsessed with smaller details. It doesn't mean that the quality of my work is not good, but I really need to see what's a must-have and what's a nice-to-have. The must-haves then have to be really well done and perfect, and I have a lot of attention to detail to the must-haves. The nice-to-haves, I feel very comfortable in ditching them. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It is what it is. And yeah, maybe you would like to give the training, as you mentioned, in every single aspect, but you can't. So you delegate to Jan and to other people. So your new employees, they receive training, right? Because you decided to not take everything on your shoulder. But I also find, like, managers are super busy. Me too. I'm busy. I'm super busy as well. But I see as well in most employees, no matter if it's sales or non-sales, people have a huge problem with time management. I've seen that because many times like in the same hour, while sometimes I accomplish 10 things, someone only accomplished one. So it's like, how? Like, how is this possible? So a lot of things that managers are super busy with, it's also because they don't delegate on technology.
Yeah.
Technology is here, and there is a lot of talks about AI. Technology is here to make us more efficient and to delegate the automatic and brainless tasks to them, so we can focus on what really matters, which is, in case of a manager, managing your team, and that includes training your team. So I think with so much technology helping us out, I think we have less and less excuse to be busy, at least with
absolutely
small tasks.
Yeah, I think one thing we just talked about the onboarding, right? So it's just like the first couple of weeks and months, but I think what comes next is then ongoing training and enablement of your team, because especially if you're working in SaaS sales, the product is developing so fast normally that you always need to train your people, right? I think that's super important, and many companies don't have that, right? They expect people to train themselves, right? So like, what's your experience with that? Like, what do you think, what's important there?
I'm super glad you mentioned that too. I remember a couple of years ago in another company, they would also, again, the product is very technical, we're selling to technical people, and then, like, every time there was a new product like coming out, I mean, I believe it must be amazing, but I didn't get it at all, right? So it'd be like a meeting with everyone from the US and Europe and wherever, watching someone super technical talking about this amazing new feature with words I don't understand, And then I was like, cool, you're ready to sell this, right? Bye-bye. No, and then they would send me a quiz. And I'm going to tell you what I used to do as a lead. I shouldn't be saying this, but I will. So I was the lead SDR team. So I was leading my team, and my job as a manager is to enable them to be efficient. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
You as a manager, your job is to remove obstacles from your team so they focus as much time as they can on selling well. That's your job as a manager in a nutshell. And that's how I see my role. So that quiz, that they had a deadline, right? Like, everyone has to do the quiz about that product. No one understands the quiz. And that would take, like, everyone in my team, was me included, really, like, complaining that they were taking, it's been an hour and they haven't nailed the quiz, and they have prospecting to do, right? And they were super nervous. So you know what I did? I nailed the quiz and I gave them all the answers. And why I'm not ashamed of sharing
that's how you remove obstacles, right?
That's how I remove obstacles. Because that quiz didn't help them to sell. No one understood what was in there. It was creating stress on my team, and they were spending valuable time. So yes, my job as a manager is to remove obstacles. So tada, that's what I did.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's super good. And I think that's what's also people like, or managers, struggling a lot, because, of course you want to enable your team, but sometimes the company or CEO level is actually stressing you and your team because of, like, let's say, like, different tasks. And I really like that what you just described.
No shame, no regrets,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like looking to, I mean, we now talked about the difficulties of training like from managers to the team, but I think one thing that's also happening is that actually the managers are actually also not really enabled and trained in a proper
Yes.
way. And I
Yes.
mean, I was lucky that we had lots of peers in the same position at Pleo, so I had like a very good network of front-end managers in different countries. So we had like a weekly exchange, so it was really really good. But I think most of the times you're alone in your role because you're just selling in the DACH market, for example, and then you have nobody for exchange. So is there like what would you say, like did you had similar experiences in your role,
Yeah.
or is it like how do you see this?
Yeah. I think you bring up once again a great point, which is, and again, what happens a lot, and I'm probably what's happened to you as well, is usually sales managers are top performers, right? Who got promoted, and in many times, being a top performer requires a certain set of skills, and being a manager requires different. It doesn't mean you can be very good in both. You can also be
Yeah,
terrible in both, and you can also be very good in one and very bad in the other. But the thing is, no matter what the situation is, a manager needs to be trained, because when you're a very good sales rep and you are promoted to manager, you have that part of knowledge that's good, right? You know how to sell the product, you know the product well, you know your personas well. Let's hope at least, and that's a part that's covered, and that's why you were promoted. But everything else is missing, right? So motivating the team, communicating to the team, like training the team, coaching the team, removing obstacles. What's an obstacle? What's not? What's relevant to your team?
yeah,
What's not? How to balance office politics, what corporate wants, what your boss wants, and what is actually useful. Because what happens a lot of
yeah,
times is boss wants something that's an obstacle for your team to perform, right? So what you're gonna do? It's either choosing performance or pleasing your boss, right? So
yeah,
balancing this out is very difficult, and there is usually no training. So I really think that companies should also companies should invest in training, from onboarding to continuous training to training the product properly, not with quizzes that no one understands, and then on training as well. Me personally, like, I self-train in everything, and I'm sure it is the same for you. Like, I self-trained myself to be an SDR. I went to look for content from John Barrows, and then I also self-trained myself in manager, and also, like, I learned from other people's mistakes. So when I was an SDR, I was like, okay, whenever I'm going to lead a team, I'm not going to do this, because I saw how unhappy this particular thing made my team. So I also learned from I try to learn a lot from other people's mistakes, so I don't make those as well. But it's true, I never got any training of anything, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
I'm all
yeah.
self-trained.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And what I've seen as well is that, like, let's say what you described, you have some top performers, he's promoted to become a manager, and the company knows, okay, he's not able to train him in specific tasks. Then what they normally would do is they're hiring, or not hiring, but they will pay for an external training, right? So, and then you have like maybe one or two external trainings per year, but it's very generic most of the times and not tailored to what the people actually need. So I think
Yeah,
what is super super important as a manager is being aware of what your people need and what different sets they have, and then tailor the training to their
yeah,
needs. So for
yeah,
example, Jan, as said, he was perfect at social selling. It would be a waste of money to pay a trainer to tell him something about social selling, right? So um, that's why I really love also the concept of the master classes and the art circus, because you can basically just look for what kind of need do you have in your
yeah,
team, and then select the right things for the people, send them there or let them train, and then they get fresh impulse, right? They will get like new ideas. And I think what I love about the circus as well is it's not only about the training, but you can also network and talk to other people, and like that's ongoing, right? So you can
yeah,
basically have like also after the event, you can reach out to people and talk to them about topics that you're actually caring about. And that's what's actually helpful to strengthen the knowledge, right? It's not
yeah,
this one training once a year. It's about constantly talking about your problems and
Yeah.
maybe looking for a coach as well, right? So I think, and that's also like an external one, the external coach, because it's a different perspective you will get.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem of like the one time training is it's the way you learn like sales is by repeating. Like you have to, it's not like, oh, this is how you write a good email. Did you get it? It's like you're gonna write emails. Like I have a lot of experience in writing emails, and my emails I think are pretty good. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them. And still, after all my experience on that, I still need to continue and to evolve and to rewrite, right? So I write the sequences for my team, because it also gives me like I don't want to forget about that and I want to improve on it. So and that's already someone who is very experienced on the topic. But for new learners, I remember when I first start writing my emails, it would take me 1 hour to write the good email. Like now it takes me 5 minutes, 2 minutes, but to get from 1 hour to 2 minutes, that's a lot of practice. So how can you expect results for one day training? That's most of the time theory. That's sales is like playing a musical instrument or playing sports. It's not like, okay, this is how you play the flute. You get it, right? Now do a concert. And it's like, that's not how it works, and sales is the same. Like sales is like anything that needs practice, so one time training, it's not enough. So you need to repeat the same thing over and over again. I have on my podcast, Sales Training Dreadless Sins, I had a sales trainer. He said something really interesting to me, which was, sometimes I give the same training every week, and I know it's boring. I know it's boring listening to the same thing every week and practicing the same thing every week, but that's how you get to perfection. And I was like, true.
Yeah.
It's nicer to listen to someone making you feel good about yourself. Useless. Totally useless.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think what always made the difference for me was when I also, like, I was not the best learner in school. I have to admit, I just don't like to learn things by heart, because this doesn't help me. So what I was always trying to do is like, I need to understand it. There are people that like it actually, but I wanted to understand the core, right? So that I can make use of the whole thing. So also like looking to the masterclasses or the circus content. I think what I've heard also from different sales leaders is, you will not manage to see all the content in one day, for example, right? So you need to specify what you said. You will send people to this workshop, others will listen into this stage. And then what we also recommend is, like, build your champions again. Like if you know Mafalda is going to talk about technical prospecting, and that you think it's relevant for like maybe 2 or 3 people in your team, you can send 1 or 2, and then you will take all the informations and discuss it afterwards in your team on a regular basis. So let's say, okay, this is what we learned. I think this is how we can make use of it with our product and our sales process, and then follow up on it, and then say, okay, after 1 or 2 weeks, what have you done? What did you learn? What worked good? What didn't work good? So I think that's how you actually make people also not only think about the content and the training, but also but also make them make use of it, right? So I think that's something I can really recommend. Not just do the training, but follow up on the content.
Follow up and the discussion part, as you mentioned, is very important, because that's something we also recommend here at Wanderway when we recommend things to our customers. Is it's important to once train on something that's actually useful, that will move the needle. So if the problem is in booking meetings, then maybe messaging persona. If it's in conversion, probably in follow up on disco. So first, train on something that will move the needle. Second, do follow-ups and assessments that are related to the theory you just gave. So practice, and then discuss about it. Because especially in continuous training, when you have a group of AEs discussing this topic, you will learn from each other, right? And it's like, actually, something I do here is, and every time I I trained my SDRs like that, the discussions were very, very useful, because I would have an SDR saying, actually, what works for me is, and maybe she didn't even like share that because she didn't even came across sharing that good tip. It's not because she want to keep it for herself. It's because it just there wasn't any opportunity, right? And sometimes people forget.
Yeah.
So these discussions also bring up things that are working and things that are not working. Someone saying, hey, I tried that approach, didn't work for me. That's information, very valid information for me, so I don't waste my time. And it's really like, fostering this discussion is really, really, really relevant. And I also learn a lot from the podcast, right? So I have the one about training. I learned a lot, and I was like, these are really good tips. Yes, this I will apply. Or I'll share these tips with my customers too, right? Like, sharing is caring, and I completely agree with you on that. We need to talk more to each other,
Yeah, absolutely. Mafalda, we are already talking half an hour. Unfortunately, we're coming to an end here. But I think what would be really helpful also for people who wants to get more information about you and your content. You just mentioned you have a podcast, or basically you have two podcasts. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about where do we find your podcast and what are you actually talking about in the podcast?
Absolutely. So you can find the podcasts on YouTube and on the website of my company, Wanderway.io. And I have two because, and that's a bit of a wrap up of our conversation. Throughout my SDR and training career, there were two topics that I found that company was failing big time. First is understanding buyer personas. No one gives really good training on buyer personas. And if you don't understand you're selling to, like, forget it. You can be super knowledgeable about your product and all the technical details, but you're not going to be successful if you don't understand your buyer. So that's why I have my first podcast, A Day in the Life of, which I interview 3 buyer personas of the same department. So 3 heads of engineering, 3 heads of quality assurance, 3 heads of marketing. I'll be recording soon one with CISOs, right? So chief security officers. And in this podcast, I asked what companies should be asking to their buyer personas. What you do? What does your typical day look like? What's in your mind? What stresses you out? And in the end, I also show a prospecting email, and I love that part because they love to start complaining about all the emails they receive every day. So if you don't want to hear to half an hour of me interview, even though you should go there, find your persona. You don't have to listen to the other episodes. Listen to your persona one. That's exactly what the goal of that podcast is. Just cherry pick the one it's useful to you, and listen until the end so you hear the feedback on the email. And I think that's quite useful. So that's the first one. And the second one is training mistakes. So basically what we were talking about this whole episode today, about training mistakes, and too much info, too much theory, all of that we discussed, no continuous training. We talk about that. That's a very short podcast. It's 15 minutes because I want my speakers to just give me 3 training mistakes, and that's it. And then we both go home. So those are the 2 podcasts I have. And check it out.
I really like it, and go check it out. I think it's really cool. And then you mentioned you have Masterclass for SDRs of Germany, and you're also speaking at our event on the 19th of April at the Artist Circus. So maybe for those, give us a little sneak peek. Like, what do we get? Like, if we're buying your Masterclass, and what can people expect from your your Masterclass on the Artist Circus?
So basically, my masterclass is about prospecting technical personas. And the reason is you find a lot of amazing content on how to prospect in general. And usually our sales trainers usually sell to salespeople. And when I was an SDR, I was like, this is cool. This sounds good, but I cannot really apply this to a CTO. So basically, mine is more specific on how to communicate with CISOs, CTOs, head of quality assurance, product, people who are way more technical and who have bad experience with salespeople. So it's very tailored. And once again, if you sell to technical people, then that's Masterclass is for you. If you sell to sales or marketing, you can still, I think it's going to still learn something, but it's not as tailored as for the other personas. And I talk about how to do a good onboarding, so a bit what we discussed today, how they like to communicate, what they look for in solutions, what usually they value. And then I have a lot of exercises. I show, like I have an interview that I did myself with the CTO that you can read. You have emails that I wrote and I showed to personas, and you have the comments. So you have to rewrite that email with the feedback that you read from the personas. So it's very focused on that. And that goes to the artist, presentation I have.
Circus.
I will also talk about technical personas. And I'm going to be speaking about personas in general and how SDRs can learn more about them and how can they be independent as well in learning. Because, most of companies, they send you a one-pager about the persona, and they expect you to prospect properly, understand based on that one pager. So you, as a salesperson, as an AE, you as a professional, you are also responsible for your own success. In ideal world, the companies would give you the training, but that's not what happens. So you are responsible for your own success and for your own life, and you should totally be independent and gather the information yourself. But I understand sometimes that can be tricky, so I try to, let's say, empower reps to know exactly where to look for, to learn, to apply, and to be successful in their role.
Yeah, very good recommendation here. And for all those of you, most of the companies are actually providing training and enablement budgets. So make sure to ask your boss if they provide those kinds of budgets, because I hear oftentimes that people don't even use the money. So that would be a waste of money. So make sure you use the money right and invest in training and enablement for yourself. Thanks for being my guest today, Mafalda. It was a pleasure to talk to you one more time. Yeah. And for those of you guys who want to meet Mafalda in person, make sure to mark your calendar 19th of April in Berlin at the Artist Circus, and see you there. Have a nice day.
I'll see you there.
Übrigens, dieser Podcast wurde dir präsentiert von SDRs of Germany, der Vertriebscommunity für den Dachmarkt. Wenn du auf der Suche bist, um dich mit anderen Vertrieblern auszutauschen und deine Karriere im Turbo vorantreiben möchtest, dann werde Teil unserer coolen Community. Alle Infos unter www.sdrsofgermany.com.